Senator Rand Paul not quite convinced, though, that is all it appears to be. He joins me right now on this budget issue, so much more. Senator, good to see you. Explain to me what you didn't like about that deal.
You know, my concern is what will the Saudis do with the weapons? For example, we know from Hillary Clinton's emails that were leaked, through WikiLeaks, we know that she was concerned that the Saudis were giving financial assistance and arms to ISIS and to other radical Islamic groups in Syria and around the world. We know from Bob Graham's investigation of 9/11 that there are many who imply and believe that Saudi Arabia might have had something to do with 9/11. We know that Saudi Arabia is currently involved in a war in a neighboring country in Yemen in which tens of thousands of civilians are dying, and there's a humanitarian crisis created by this war. So I'm concerned, what will Saudi Arabia do with these weapons? And I think the weapons, in a way, belong to the American public because American tax dollars go to developing these weapons for our defense. So this isn't like trying to convince someone to buy apples from the United States or to buy tobacco from the United States. This is something that is intimately involved with our national security. We shouldn't sell weapons to countries who I think may well do more harm than good with those weapons.
But what if they use those weapons to go after ISIS?
Well, what if we know historically from the leaked emails from Hillary Clinton that they were using the weapons and giving them to ISIS? So I don't know that they're to be trusted. They have supported al-Nusra, they have supported al-Qaeda elements, they have supported ISIS in the Syrian civil war. Their concern is to promote their radical form of Islam, Wahhabism. And that is really a virus that is sort of spread throughout the world. It teaches hatred of America and intolerance. And I just don't think that's something that's in our best interest to support them.
You know, earlier this morning, Senator, Speaker Paul Ryan said that he did not agree with President Trump that James Comey was a nut job. What about you?
My concern with Comey was that I think he politicized the investigation into the Clinton camp, what she did with her private server and whether she breached national security. When you start having press conferences, it becomes more about the person and less about the investigation. And I think almost everybody in the country thought he did a bad job. The Democrats thought he indicted her publicly by saying she was guilty, but he didn't have enough evidence to prosecute her. Republicans thought, well, gosh, if she was so guilty of all this, why didn't he prosecute her? So really, I don't think anybody in the whole country was happy with the way he went about the Clinton investigation. From my personal point of view, I also thought the FBI let us down with the Orlando killing, the terrorist that shot up the nightclub in Orlando. I also thought that whenever there was an attack on our homeland, he sort of would not accept any responsibility for it, but he would come back and ask for more invasions of our privacy, more breakdown on encryption. All the things he was asking for was, give me more power, instead of how could the FBI do a better job at preventing terrorist acts.
We've had a lot of stories, usually unsourced, as you pointed out in prior interviews, about the president trying to impede this Russian probe. Do you think he has tried to block, thwart, prevent anything having to do with this probe potentially leaking his campaign with the Russians?
No. In fact, his administration has a special counsel that's going to look into this, so I don't think there'll be any impediments to this.
But anything you've heard in the past, Senator, where he, again, this is coming from named sources, the Washington Post was saying that he was urging his top security folks to do what they could to make this FBI thing go away. You don't believe that?
I wasn't in the room, but from the reports I've heard, the way I understand the conversation went down is he was probably annoyed saying, this is ridiculous, when are you going to be done with this stupid Russian thing? And the implication was he wanted it to be done. I think a lot of us want it to be done because we think that there is no there. I mean, the best article I've seen in the last couple of weeks on this was Alan Dershowitz, who said, look, even if the Trump campaign spoke to the Russians about releasing things to WikiLeaks, there isn't a federal crime against that. It's stupid and they shouldn't have done it, but you have to actually have a federal crime. And so far, all of these people that are stirring this thing up, not one of them have put forward what crime or what crime has been committed.
All right, they all leap on this obstruction of justice thing, that if you talk to the FBI director about making an investigation go away, again, there's no proof of that. You have one word against another. But do you think talking to the FBI director in that way about making an investigation stop or going light on General Flynn, would that, to you, Rand Paul, United States Senator, who would have to weigh on these matters if it ever escalates to that, do you think that's obstruction of justice?
I think expressing annoyance over the slowness of an investigation and saying, you know what, if there's something there, let's get it out there, let's be done with it, but let's not just sit and let this thing fester. I don't think that's obstruction of justice. That's just impatience to get to the truth, and that's the way I would look at it. But I think all of this is sour grapes. This is all being played up. Look, every Democrat in the country wanted James Comey to go. They all thought that he lost the election for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton believes this. They all wanted him to go until he finally went, and now they're all hot and bothered thinking, oh, this was obstruction somehow. No, it's sour grapes over the election. We've got to get beyond the election.
So what could account for John McCain, Senator, saying this is on a scale of Watergate, or is that bad blood between the two?
You know, McCain's had his own sort of personal disagreements with the president. I can't go there as far as what's involved with that adversarial relationship. But what I can say is that I've seen no evidence of a crime. If there is, I'll reevaluate the situation. But I think the sooner, the better we get this done with and get the investigation to its completion. I think really in the end, even though I wasn't a big fan of having a special counsel, at least now we can say, look, we have a law enforcement professional going to take care of it. Let's let it go where it's going to go, and let's not get too involved with politics here. Let's just see what happens.
Senator, finally on the budget, it's been blasted by Democrats. That isn't too surprising. I think Chuck Schumer said it takes a cleaver to the middle class. What do you think? Some Republicans are afraid it's going to put them sort of behind the eight ball going into the midterm elections. What do you think?
I think that when you look at the overall budget, the easier way to do is to say we're going to cut a little bit everywhere instead of a lot in some places and none in other places. What I've advised is that if you would just freeze spending, that you actually balance in about 5 or 6 years, and then everybody equally across the board will have to give up a little bit.
So freeze it at these levels. In other words, don't you know, because you're right. I mean, with the Medicaid thing, it's still going to go up. It's just not going to go up as much. But you would freeze it at the levels they're at now.
That's one of the things that's been most misreported on
Absolutely.
Medicaid. They're like, oh, he's going to slash Medicaid. No, Medicaid's going to grow a little bit slower than it has been growing.
You're right.
In Washington, they call that a cut. It's an increase in spending for Medicaid, but it's at a slightly slower rate than Medicaid's been increasing. That is not a dramatic cut. That is what you have to do to preserve our country and not let us get swallowed up by the debt that's so enormous.
But is it dead on arrival, as some of your own colleagues have said in your own party?
Unfortunately, what happens around here is that the military hawks want more military spending, and then the initial budget shows some cuts to pay for it. But by the time it gets to Congress, they'll get the military spending and they'll get the domestic spending, and we'll just get a bigger debt. So my prediction is everybody gets everything they want, except for those of us who are concerned about the debt, and there'll be a much expansion of the debt under whatever comes out of Congress.
Senator Rand Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you.